Working Cows Podcast, Episode 13.
Welcome to the podcast that gives producers a platform to discuss and share paradigm-challenging practices. Practices that have increased the effectiveness of their operation and the joy that their families have received from this lifestyle.
This episode has been brought to you in part by Kamak Ranch Supply. Check out their website at kamakranchsupply.com. This episode is also brought to you by chriswilliamsaudio.com. Head on over to chriswilliamsaudio.com for all your audio production needs. Hello, everybody. Before we get to today's interview, I just wanted to make you aware of a couple of things. If you know any innovative and out-of-the-box ranchers in Texas, Nebraska, Kansas, California, or Oklahoma, I would love to get them on the show. You can drop me a line and let me know who they are at 605-549-5401, 605-549-5401. Leave a voicemail, and we will see what we can do about getting connected with them, or you can go to workingcows.net and workingcows.net/contact and drop me a line there, and we will try and get in touch with those. My goal for 2018, just to let you in on the inside baseball here, my goal for 2018 is to have the top downloading states be the top beef producing states in America. I'd just like to see that. The reason for that is because I'm making this podcast for beef producers, and so I want to know that we're putting out a product that beef producers are enjoying. And if the top 5 states producing beef are the top 5 states downloading this podcast, hopefully that's an indication that I'm doing something right. So today on the show, we have Dave Pratt joining us. Dave is one of the most sought after speakers on sustainable agriculture and profitable ranching in the world today. He has taught the Ranching for Profit School in the United States, Canada, Mexico, Australia, and Africa. Dave, thanks for joining me today on the Working Cows Podcast. I appreciate the time. Would you just take a little bit of time and introduce yourself a little bit to the people, kind of what you're doing now and what led you to what it is that you do right now?
Short story. Grew up in a small place in Northern California, 5th generation Californian. My family goes back to 1847. Right now I live halfway between San Francisco and Sacramento, which is about 10 miles from where my mom was born. I run a company called Ranch Management Consultants. We do 2 programs. We do something called the Ranching for Profit School. It's a business school for ranchers. It's based on one very simple concept, and that is that knowing how to raise livestock is not the same thing as knowing how to run a business that raises livestock. They're 2 entirely different skill sets. We also do a program called Executive Link. Executive Link is our graduate program, and it's based on 2 concepts. And the first one is that it's always easier to run your neighbor's ranch. It's always easier to see how the neighbor ought to be doing things. And the other concept is that when you're self-employed, you work for a lunatic. And that's not because we're not smart or because you don't work hard. It's because nobody holds you accountable. We work on the things we're good at and the things we enjoy. And sometimes those aren't the things that need to be done. We spend so much time on the $10 an hour jobs, we never get around to the $100 an hour jobs. And anybody that would let their employee get away with that is a lunatic. So that's called Executive Link, and what we do is organize graduates of the school into boards of directors for one another, or peer advisory boards. And those boards give independent, objective perspectives about what other people are doing and how they might solve their problems. And then they hold them accountable to implement the solutions. And that's what we do, the Ranching for Profit School and Executive Link.
Very good. Very good. I had Dallas Mount on episode 2 of the Working Cows Podcast, and he told about how your dad taught you how to build a fence, and he taught you how to, pull a calf, but he didn't teach you how to run a business. And that's, I think, a lot of what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the challenges facing ranches today, or what are some of the problems with the ranching paradigm that a lot of people are operating in as you see it?
I think the biggest problem we have, there's a couple, and there are a lot of challenges. I think we tend to focus on the wrong things. Stan Parsons is the founder of our company. Stan used to say we're shooting bullseyes. The problem is we're aiming at the wrong target. I think the challenges that we're most concerned about are things that are largely beyond our control. And there's no point in complaining about things you can't do anything about. There are plenty of things within our control that we can do something about. Here's one. I think the biggest problem that we face in ranching is the belief that ranching can't be profitable. Or if it can be profitable, that profit is dependent on price and weather. Again, two things that are beyond our control. If I believe that profit is dependent on prices and weather, why would I even bother trying to manage my business? And there's the second problem, is ranching a business. For most of us, some people take this as an insult. It's not intended that way. For most of us, our ranches are not really businesses. The IRS might call it a business. But if you really objectively look at it, it's just a big pile of expensive assets and a whole bunch of low-paying, physically demanding jobs. That's what most ranches are. And I can prove it. If you were to sell your ranch, what would you be selling?
Assets.
You'd just be selling a big pile of expensive assets. That's not what a business is. A business is something much more than that. And there's a whole bunch of other things. I'll bet some of the listeners to this have made the comment, we really ought to run this as though it were a business. As though it were a business. When we say that, we're acknowledging that it's not really a business. We can pretend for a while, but you can only keep that act up for so long. It's going to become what it is. And for most of us, we own our job. Or actually, you know what? The biggest issue that people face in coming to the school is being able to get away. If you can't get away for a week, you don't own a job. The job owns you.
I've been there. I've been married to a job before that I couldn't get away from. So, I think I spent 10 years running a coffee shop with my wife doing most of that work, but to learn how not to run a business. And I'm hoping that I can apply some of those things I learned as I learn new skills through different programs that I'm trying to keep myself in. I hope I can learn to run the ranching operation that I have the privilege of being a part of as a business. And so what are some of the things that you would have to do if you were going to transition to running your ranch as a business? Not as though it were a business, but running your ranch as a business. What are some
running the business?
To running the business. Running a ranching business.
Well, here's the deal. A lot of people look for the change out there. What do I have to do? What bookwork do I have to do? What do I have to change here? What do I have to change there? The biggest change you have to make is not out there. The biggest change you have to make is in you. It's to recognize that your relationship to the ranch is going to have to change. The ranch is not a job, it's a business. And we call that a paradigm shift. It's maybe the most powerful paradigm shift anybody can make. So the change isn't to the grazing, it's not to the finances, it's actually to all those things, but the biggest change is to you. One of the things I was talking to folks about today is it's been said that if you never do the hard thing, then life's going to be hard. But if you'll do that hard thing, on the other side of it, it can be a much easier, better way to be. This paradigm shift of going from owning a job to owning a business, that is a tough thing. That's a tough thing. Another thing we were talking about is you can't build a sustainable business on unsustainable effort. I mean, that's not intended to be a soundbite. That's it's just the way it is by definition. We wear it like a badge of honor. I haven't taken a vacation in 20 years. Yeah, well, when somebody tells me that, I don't see that as something to brag about. I see that as something to be embarrassed about. My reaction, I don't say this, but I'm thinking, wow, is it that bad a business? If you can't get away, if it's not supporting you, you have to support it. Wow, that's not good. This business ought to be supporting us. Now, in building the business and making this transformation, it may take unsustainable effort. A burst, a year or two of just, oh man, burning the candle at both ends, going flat out. But on the other side of that effort to make this transformation, this ought to be a place that supports you, that you're not working for it, it's working for you at that point. I know a lot of that sounds trite, like sound bites, but if you talk to Derek Schwannebeck, if you talk to Glenn Barlow, who's somebody you may want to talk to, I'm going to be visiting him tonight. Well, you talk to just about any alumnus of the school, they're going to tell you that that's the reality, that they're not working harder. I mean, that's another thing we talked about, is that when you're growing up, you learn a lesson early on about making money. You have to work to make money, right? When I needed money, if I went to my folks and said, Mom, I need $5, she wouldn't just give it to me. She'd tell me, I got some chores for you to do, or maybe Joe next door has some work for you to do. Well, I learned you have to work for your money. But the problem is that's a very limiting way to think about money, because you can only work so long and you can only work so hard. The fact is there are other ways to make money. My mom did not say, Dave, why don't you go out and start some passive investments? Dave, why don't you go start a business? Because those are other ways to make money, to use other people's labor in a fair exchange, fair trade, to pay them for their work, to make profit. And that's how you run a business. And it doesn't have to be all your labor either. In fact, it probably shouldn't be.
So if we're going to look at running a business, what is the first thing that a business has to do?
Well, first thing, and people don't want to do this, people want to jump right in, well, let's build a cell, or let's figure out this or figure out that. The first thing you need to do is figure out why you're in business. This is another uncomfortable truth about business. I ask people why they ranch. What's the ranch for? Your listeners might want to think about that before I jump in with an answer. You might want to pause this thing and make a list. Why do we ranch? What is this ranch for? Most of the answers usually have to do with you and your family. Oh, it's a place to make money. It's my job. It's what I love to do. I love working outdoors. I love working with livestock. I love working for myself. Remember working for that lunatic, right? It's a great place to raise kids, opportunities for the kids, on and on and on. Yeah, your job, your kids, your money, you. Well, the primary purpose of a business is to serve a customer, period. Secondary purpose is to serve the owner. A business can only sustainably serve the owner by serving a customer. It's been said that you can only serve yourself. I see a Bible, I see the Ark, I see the cross. In a certain context, I don't want to go overboard on this, but in a certain context, this is actually kind of a spiritual thing. I believe that in life, you can only serve yourself through service to others.
Yep.
I mean, that's the core of how I was raised.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? That's what business is supposed to be for. A business is supposed to serve customers. And in doing that, you create cash flow and profit for the business. In doing that, you serve the owners. We didn't get into this today, but it's interesting how people react to that. Oh, I wouldn't want to do that. But how do you feel after you've actually helped someone? When you've helped them by providing some kind of thing that they need. Business is about helping people solve problems. How do you feel when you've helped somebody solve a problem? Is there a better feeling?
Right.
I don't think there is. Well, what kind of problem are you solving? How do I do that? Well, a uniform set of calves. Does that solve somebody's problem? Worry-free cattle that I know are going to perform, that I can be confident in. Does that solve somebody's problem? Yeah, sure it does. But you have to know who your customer is, what their needs are to really perform that service for them. So that's the first thing. What's this business for? The second thing is, what are the core principles that are going to guide the way you do business? We come up with a lot of buzzwords like integrity and honesty, and not to dismiss those as unimportant things, but those aren't principles. Those are values. The question is, how do you enact those values? What's the behavior through which you exhibit those? That's what we're trying to get at when we talk about core principles. What is the behavior that guides the way you do business? And the third thing is to define owner value. And owner value is the one people want to jump to, and that's fine. But owner value consists of two primary things. It's what you put in, that's your investment, and what you return. That's what you get out. Those investments and returns can be money. They can be time. It can be emotional. And they can be positive or they can be negative. I remember one gal who described to me how she woke up every morning, went outside, And right across the yard, 200 feet away, is where her mother-in-law lived, who reminded her on a daily basis how her son could have done so much better. Well, there's a negative return for you.
Ouch.
That's a big negative return. And I met her, and I met her mother-in-law, and I know she wasn't blowing smoke on that. That's the other thing. I hate to be talking so much here, but one of my instructors, Dallas, teaches our school, but I have another instructor, Alan Crockett from Tucson, who's fabulous. I mean, Dallas does a great job, but Alan does a bang-up job too. And Alan came to me the other day, and he said, everything is a people problem. You got cash flow issues? It's a people problem. You're not making profit? It's a people problem. You got weeds? It's a people problem. You got bare soil? It's a people problem, because there are solutions to all of these things. It's just getting everybody on the same page and working together to agree on the solutions and implement that solution. And here's the kicker, and to hold them accountable. How do you hold family members accountable in a business without having a food fight at Christmas dinner? I mean, how do you do that? Well, there are ways of doing it. We teach people how to do that, but how are you supposed to know that unless somebody teaches it to you?
Right, back to that.
You're not born with this divine knowledge of how to do this. Somewhere, somebody's got to teach you. And you either learn it through the School of Hard Knocks, and the tuition there is much higher than ours, or you learn it through us. And that's about your two choices, really. You don't learn it in business school. You don't learn it in college. As Dallas said, your dad didn't teach it to you growing up. Your dad didn't know. And it used to be that you didn't need to know. It used to be that there was enough margin in this, and the overheads were low enough, and land values were more in line with the production potential of land, to where you didn't need to be as good. This is not to demean what dad or granddad did, but you didn't need to be as sharp running a business as you do now.
You didn't have to dot the I's and cross the T's quite as precisely as you do.
You didn't even have to put a period at the end of the sentence. All right. But now your punctuation needs to be a little bit better. One of the things we were talking about today, and I don't know if you want me rambling on about this stuff.
I prefer long answers in a podcast interview, so go
Makes
ahead.
your life easy. Huh?
Yes, sir.
One of the things we were talking about, and an example we use at the school, is if you think about the size of the windshield on your car or your truck, how many square feet I'll bet you there's 12 square feet maybe more. Now think of the reflective space, the rear view mirror and the side view mirrors. What are we looking at there? Maybe 1 or 2 square feet, maybe? Mm-hmm. Wouldn't be more than 2. What's the windshield for, other than keeping bugs off your face, right? It's for looking ahead. And the rear view mirror, it's for looking back. And we think that's the proportion people ought to use in looking forward versus looking back. Can't do anything about what happened last year. So let's stop dwelling on last year. Let's start projecting next year. And in projecting next year, here's the deal. We look at driving a car. I think there's a lot of useful ways to look at this, but if you're driving a car forward, you better not be looking through the rearview mirror. You could drive a car forward looking only through the rearview mirror, but the road would have to be straight, it would have to be wide, there better not be any traffic on it, and there better not be any ditches. Well, you tell me about the future. Is this an easy business to make a profit, or is it challenging?
Yeah.
It's challenging. This is a narrow road.
Sure. Yep.
Are there changes up ahead in prices and weather, regulation? It's a curvy road. There's changes up ahead. Traffic, competition for leases, you bet. There's a lot of traffic on this road. But here's the kicker. Deep ditches? No. Most people say, oh, yeah, there's deep ditches. No, there are no ditches. We filled in the ditches. We put bubble wrap on the guardrails. There are no consequences of failure, and I'll prove it to you. We are willing to do this without paying ourselves. We're willing to do this and rely on off-farm income to make ends meet. We don't have to make a profit. Our ranches often don't make a profit, and we're still there. We aren't bankrupt. Why not? Because we're willing to subsidize these things. That's what I mean by bubble wrap and guardrails.
Yep.
All right? If we had to make a profit, if we would lose the ranch if we didn't make a profit, guess what? Y'all'd step up and do the things necessary to make a profit. You'd invest in yourself. You'd get trained. You'd figure out how to make this business really work. You'd find a way. I'm about a third Scottish, and I'm about a quarter Polish. There's an old Polish proverb, and it says, if you don't really want to do something, you can always find an excuse. If you really want to do something, you can always find a way. If you want to make a ranch profitable, if you want to really make it work, there's a way to do it. If you don't really want to do it, we can always find an excuse.
Sure. Very, very helpful, very paradigm challenging. That's what we're here to do, is to offer people opportunities to have their paradigm challenged.
But let me tell you one thing about that. When I first started teaching the school, this is like 600 years ago, I started teaching the school. Stan Parsons, who founded the company, was standing in the back of the room. He had me start teaching in Australia. I think he thought the further away I went from home, the more people would assume I knew, right? Further away you go from home, the more of an expert you become.
Right.
So anyway, he was standing in the back of the room, and I'm sure watching me teach my first class or two would probably be like watching your daughter date a Hell's Angel. I mean, it had to be torture for him to watch me do the school. Well, I had a bad day, and him standing up in the back did not make it more comfortable. I had a bad day. I forgot a very basic thing. It's called a trading account. A trading account is the tool you use to calculate gross product. And a lot of your listeners might not know what gross product is, but it's a pretty basic economic measure. It measures the value that an enterprise or that a business produces. It's a very basic thing, and I completely spaced it out. At the end of the day, Stan came up to me. We're having a drink in the pub, and Stan comes up and says, "Dave, do you even know what this school is for?" I mean, I was melting, but I pulled it together, and I thought, all right, I got to defend myself. Sure, I know what it's for. It's to give people the tools to build sustainable businesses. I thought, okay, that's a good answer. That's a good answer. And he shook his head back and forth. No. He said, "Dave, you don't get it yet. This school has one purpose. The purpose is to challenge the way people think. It is to change their paradigm." And at the time I thought, oh, come on, it has to be bigger than that. I mean, that's not big enough. I'll tell you what, the last 25 years, I've come to learn that that's everything. That's everything. Here's the deal. If you want to get different results, you need to do things differently. But you cannot do things differently until you see things differently. A paradigm describes, the paradigm are the rules we use to interpret the world around us. It's the beliefs we hold about ranching. If you believe that a big calf is the key to profitability, well, that's going to dictate your actions. You're going to have big cows. You're going to calve early. You're going to push the feed to them. You might even creep the calves. You probably precondition them. And by golly, guess what the result's going to be? You're going to get a big calf. I will not change my actions until I change my belief. That belief is your paradigm. So if I want a different result, I got to do things differently. But I cannot do things differently until I change my paradigm. And that's what Stan was talking about. That's the whole purpose of the whole thing, to challenge your paradigms about people, about grass, about cattle, about the relationships of all those things, your paradigms about money. That paradigm that you learned when you were young that you had to work to make money. No, that paradigm is, yeah, you can work and make money, but there are other ways, other very legitimate, ethical ways to make money that don't involve working harder. So anyway, I'm sorry for rambling on about that, but you struck a nerve with that when you started talking about paradigms.
Sure. No, it's like you said, the productivity versus profitability. It's one of those bullseyes we've been hitting bullseyes for a long time in the productivity area, but it's the wrong bullseye.
It's the wrong target, right?
Wrong target to be a sustainable business, So we've talked about customer value, core principles, owner value. I think obviously core principles and owner value are going to have to wait for another episode if you are ever so inclined. But I'd like to dive a little bit more into the customer value part of it with some questions that you outlined for us in the class to help us understand. But first, we're going to take a break and thank our sponsors, and then we'll be back with Dave Pratt from Ranch Management Consultants. This episode has been brought to you by Chris Williams Audio. Check out his website at chriswilliamsaudio.com. For the last 11 years or so, I've been talking for a living. I've gained some skills in talking. I can form a sentence. I can think on my feet. I can respond to questions. I can come up with new questions. All that time developing my speaking craft has not left me a lot of time to figure out how to make audio sound great. If you're a musician, podcaster, or filmmaker, making your product sound great is crucial. So you stick to what you know, and let Chris Williams stick to what he knows, making your product sound great. Head on over to chriswilliamsaudio.com for all your podcasting, music production, and film audio needs. We're back with Dave Pratt from Ranch Management Consultants. We're talking about operating a business and some of the basic things that we would have to know. And the first thing that we would have to know is what is a business for? And I think we've outlined so far that a business is to serve a customer, was kind of the first thing that a business is in the world to do. And you said that it was almost a spiritual thing, and I wanted to take the opportunity to agree with you. When you said that in class today, I leaned forward to the lady sitting in front of me, and I said, you said the best way to help yourself is to serve others. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
I leaned forward to the lady sitting in front of me in class, and I said, Jesus would agree. So anyways, the 5 questions that you outlined, can we work through those just a little bit?
You're going to make me remember them?
I've got them here if you want me to start.
No.
Okay.
I live, eat, and breathe this stuff.
Yes.
This is the unrealistic expectation. People come to the school, and I probably shouldn't tell you this, but before we get into this, I'm going to tell you my business model. All right. When I'm doing a workshop like I did today, people might find this insulting, and you might want to cut this out. But when I do a workshop like I did today, I assume everybody in the room is unconsciously incompetent. In other words, I didn't know that there was something I didn't know. I didn't know what I didn't know. My goal today was to make people conscious of their incompetence. You know what? I don't know how to do that. I need to find that out. When people come to the school, what we try to do is make them consciously competent. Here are the tools. You can do this. Apply it to a case study. Apply it to your business. Do it at the school. We'll look over your shoulder. Make sure you get it. And when you get home, here's the instruction manual. And if I follow it, I can work at this. I can get this. And then in Executive Link, we go to the last step, and that's make people unconsciously competent. So I don't have to think about what a trading account is. I don't have to think about what gross product is. I know that stuff. It's just part of who I am. It's part of what I do. It's part of the way I run things.
Yep.
When you work cattle, you don't have to think, okay, now how do I give this shot? You don't have to think about that. That's secondhand knowledge. Well, the same thing needs to be true when it comes to calculating a gross margin or figuring out how to do a trading account. That needs to be firsthand knowledge.
Sure.
Too.
Absolutely. I'm going to leave that in, though, because we're sitting in my office at the church that I've worked at for now 11 years, and across the hallway is my pastor's office, and I can't tell you how many times he's used that exact same matrix.
Oh, really?
For spiritual principles, that we go from being unconsciously incompetent to consciously incompetent to consciously competent. And then finally, you're on autopilot, so to speak. You're unconsciously competent. And Derek Schwannebeck actually did that today. We were talking about kind of grazing and deferred grazing mostly, but we got into the other forms of grazing a little bit. But he just rattled off one of the principles you talked about, stock days per acre per inch of rain.
Really?
And that was just one of the things that they use every day in their business to determine their grazing plan. So these 5 questions that we have danced around just a little bit, I want to leave people with these and
Sure.
just give some detail on them as we go. So what's the first one?
Well, like that thing we just talked about, the consciously competent, that's not unique to me. I think it applies to what we do. This first question isn't unique to me either. It comes from a book, one of the best books ever written about small business. It's by Michael Gerber. It's called The E-Myth Revisited. The E-Myth stands for the entrepreneurial myth. And the fact is that most small companies fail. In their first year, 40% of them fail. And by the 10th year, only 4% of new startup companies survive. 97% of franchise businesses survive to their 10th year. All right. So this comes from and I'm not going to tell you why that is. I know why that is. I learned it from Michael Gerber. And I think it applies. And I think it applies to ranching. You don't see all these ranchings failing because we're used to subsidizing the ranches with off-farm income and inherited wealth and all the rest, which is fine if you're happy to do that. But it's kind of hard to pass that on to the next generation or get the next generation excited. So this first question comes from the E-Myth. And the question is this: what's your product? It sounds like a really basic question, and it is, but your product isn't what you think it is. Gerber makes a distinction between your product and your commodity. Your commodity is the physical thing you sell. It's a bred heifer. It's a weaned calf. It's a feedlot-ready steer. It's a cull cow. That's the commodity. Your product is the value someone derives from your commodity, the value they derive. So that weaned calf, why would I buy that? I mean, Why would I buy it from you? Dependable performance. Oh gosh, I pissed a seed stock guy off so bad the other day. I said, what do you sell? What is your product? He said, I sell genetics. No, what is the value I get from that? I sell superior genetics, he said. And I just went off the cuff and said, well, I wouldn't buy a bull from you. Oh, he got mad. But my point in that was his job is to solve my problem. My problem isn't just about genetics. My problem is about creating an adapted cow herd that will thrive in my environment, that doesn't need a lot of crutches, that's going to make me some money. His job is to make me money. That's what he's selling me. That's what he needs to be selling me. If I'm going to buy a bull from him, he needs to produce that product. So the product is the value created by the commodity. I hope that makes sense to
Absolutely.
folks.
And I think one thing that really cleared it up, and it's a hilarious thing, so I'll ask you to include it, is the statement by the Revlon CEO about the difference between their commodity and their value.
Yeah, this is not original to me. This is from the E-Myth, but Gerber describes a statement made by Charles Revson. He's the founder of Revlon Cosmetics. And he is supposed to have said that Revlon, our commodity, is cosmetics. We manufacture cosmetics, but what we sell is hope. And I don't know if that's a hope to be more attractive or to feel younger or what, but it's a good example of looking. I mean, take Disney, all right? The Disney Corporation. What if their product were movies? No. Their product, their commodity is movies, but their product is to bring entertainment to millions, to bring happiness to millions. Well, boy, that sure expanded things beyond a theme park and a movie, didn't it? That opens the door to all sorts of possibilities. So anyway, the difference between your commodity and your product.
Yeah, it's an important distinction because I think that it helps us with a lot of different things, marketing being one of them. And then the next question, what's number 2?
Well, I can get this product from anybody. Why would I get it from you? Why do I want to do business with you? So that's the second thing. The third one is, what do you promise me? What are you going to guarantee me when I do business with you? When I buy this product from you, what do you guarantee I'm going to get? And if you fail to deliver on this promise, I'm not only going to get my money back, but I'm going to get the most sincere, deepest apology that you can muster. And if you ever fail to deliver on this promise again, you'll go out of business. That's how committed you are to this promise. What is your promise? That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
The next question, number 4, is, and sometimes I put these in different orders, but the next one I'm going to put in here is, what are you passionate about? And what's your customer passionate about? You get to answer this one from 2 aspects. What passions are you trying to satisfy for your customer and for you and your workforce? You want a motivated workforce? You better have people loving what they do. So what passions for your customer and for you are you trying to satisfy? And the 5th question, and I actually think the most important question of the bunch, is, if you're successful, what's the highest good that can happen for your customer? If you're successful, what's the best outcome for your customer? That is probably the most important statement that led to our mission statement. Our mission at Ranch Management Consultants is healthy land, happy families, and profitable businesses. Your land, your family, your business. We think that's the best outcome. It's also, if you talk to people like Derek Schwannebeck, you're going to find out it's a pretty common outcome. In fact, it's more than common. It would be the rare exception that wasn't the outcome.
Very good. Very good. I have one last question, and it was a question that came up while you were talking about this in the class, and I was too scared to ask it in front of everybody because sometimes I don't know what I don't know, and I'm afraid to sound stupid in front of a bunch of people I don't know. So I'm going to ask it now because I've done some research, and I think it is a fairly decent question. To answer, or is the sale barn the best place to answer questions 3 and 5, which were, what do you promise me? And what is the highest good that can happen for your customer?
Is the sale barn the best place to answer that question?
When you've got 30 seconds and an auctioneer that doesn't know you, your cows, or your business.
Well, you can guess what my answer is going to be to that. I'm more curious about what your answer is.
I don't think it is. Because
why not?
There's no relationship there. There's no way that they don't know you. The auctioneer doesn't know you. The order buyer doesn't know you. And there's no way that relationship can be effectively developed in the amount of time that your cows spend, or your calves, or whatever you're marketing, spend in the sale ring. And so it seems to me that there's a better opportunity to develop a relationship with the next person in the chain of custody of that animal. But
I think it may be the wrong question. The way I interpreted your question was, is that the best place to come up with questions, whatever the question numbers were? No, it can't be. The best place to come up with that is probably sitting under a pine tree somewhere, having a beer, discussing this. See, people think working on the business means shoving a lot of paper around. That's not working on the business. Working on the business means to be sitting down in a relaxed environment, or maybe riding around, discussing with people who are important to the success of your business. Why are we doing this? What's the best strategy to use? Sometimes we forget, I think, as ranchers, that our primary job is to think. You're not thinking in the sale barn, you're reacting in the sale barn. So you have to have thought things through before you get there. Now, could the buyers in the sale barn, or an order buyer there, or whoever's buying cattle, could that be your customer? Absolutely. Absolutely. What is it they need? All right. They're looking for a specific thing. They're looking to fill a truckload lot, right? So the best time to sell an animal is when they're trying to fill a load, right? So you need to fill, if that's your customer, what is their need? How can you fill it, right? What is the need that you can satisfy there? The product you're delivering is a full load, maybe. So it could be a very appropriate outlet for selling stuff. But that's not where you figure this stuff out. You figure this stuff out in a much more relaxed environment where you're not distracted by a dozen other things going on at once.
Yep. And I'm thinking about the customer relationship, and how do you develop that customer relationship? But
well, keep this in mind too. You don't need to have a customer relationship. We're developing a program called Next Steps. And Next Steps is a cloud-based program, consists of 4 things. There's a baseline unit where you measure every aspect of your business to create this baseline, and then you report against that to see, are you getting better or are you getting worse? The second piece of Next Steps is coaching tutorials to build a strategic plan. The next piece is a module on coaching tutorials and assignments to build an operating plan. Cash flow, stock flow, grazing chart, labor flow, crop flow, all that. And the last piece is a set of assignments and coaching sessions to build a policy manual, your drought policy, your marketing plan, your succession plan. Just the first piece alone, just the baseline unit, there's 164 videos. Just the first part of that. Very intense product. We've got, 8,000 alumni now? Guess what? I can't have a personal face-to-face relationship with every single one of them. Now, when it comes to Executive Link, I want to have a relationship. I don't want somebody in the EL that I don't know. I mean, it's fine if they join and I don't know them, but by the time they're in, by the end of the year, I want to know something about the business. I want to be able to recognize them. I want to know some of the issues they're facing. That's the relationship I want to have. When it comes to Next Steps, part of my deal there is I am not going to have a face-to-face relationship with these people. I'd love it, but what a limiting way to approach that business. If I took that attitude on this product, I'd be able to help 100 people.
Sure.
My hope is to help 10,000 people.
Right. An economy of scale.
Exactly. So different products to different markets, different relationships. I mean, there's not a one-size-fits-all thing here.
Sure.
Ranching for Profit School, that instructor is going to have a direct connection with every single student in that class. All right. That's what we're going for. Executive Link, I'm going to have a direct relationship with every single person in the program. But there are times and places where that relationship is not the appropriate relationship for the product you're trying to deliver. Does that make sense?
Very good. Thank you. Well, I really appreciate your time today. I appreciate you taking the time to invest in producers in all the different contexts that you do it. So I want to give you an opportunity to tell people where to keep up with you, some promotion, if you will. Have at it.
Shameless self-promotion.
Yep. This is your time.
Perfect. Well, I was telling somebody earlier today that I never met anybody who said, gosh, I wish I'd waited longer to go to that school. It is a breakthrough experience for people. If you know anybody that's been through it, you might want to ask them about it, because it's not going to mean much coming from me. Ask them. I guess the biggest thing is we are redesigning the website now, and I think by the time this comes out, it'll probably be finished. There's 2 things you might want to do. One is an article I write, an e-column that I put out twice a month. It's called Profit Tips. It's free. It was originally intended to support Ranching for Profit School graduates, to keep their head in the game. Here's how somebody's applying this principle, or here's more depth on this particular thing. Got about 6,000 or 7,000 subscribers. Most people think it's worth getting. So while it was originally intended for alumni, we've opened up the doors and said, hey, anybody who wants to get it, doesn't cost us anything to make it available. It's available. And there's about 10 years of archives there. If it relates to profitable ranching, at some point, we've probably written about it. It's probably there. You might have to search a little bit to find it, but it's there. The other thing is we're starting this program. I told you about this thing called RFP Next Steps. We're starting another program, and it's going to be free, called RFP First Steps. And what that is a series of emails. It's not a long series of emails. We'll do it for about 10 weeks. And anybody who wants to get introduced to ranching for profit principles, to understand what the 3 secrets are, to know the 5 grazing principles, to know why most rotations don't work and how to make them work. If people are interested in knowing that, well, they ought to sign up for this. And all they got to do is go to the website, ranchingforprofit.com, and hop on either the homepage or the Ranching for Profit School page, and there'll be a link that will help them sign up for that. And all we need is their name and their email address. And once a week for about 10 weeks, they'll get these lessons. There's going to be a little bit of sales pitch in there that says, all right, now you know this. If you want to know the rest of the story, you might want to consider coming to the school. But we're trying to pack an unreasonable amount of value into every single one of these. And I've got 20 of them written right now, and I'm trying to figure out how to pare it down to 10. So they're going to be information dense. They're going to be packed. And I would strongly recommend, if people are interested in learning more about these concepts and principles, that they look at RFP Next Steps by getting on the website, and they subscribe to Profit Tips. And neither one costs a cent.
Very good. Well, I thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you taking the time to invest in producers, and links to all that stuff will be at workingcows.net/lucky number 13. workingcows.net/13. You can find all of the information and all the links. There'll be a link to Dave's book, Healthy Land, Happy Families, and Profitable Businesses. There'll be a link to Michael Gerber's book, The E-Myth Revisited, and how you can sign up for Profit Tips and RFP Next Steps and other information. So it'll all be there at workingcows.net/13.
One other last thing I'll throw in. I've never charged anybody a penny to talk to them on the phone or through emails. So if people have challenges they're facing and would like to get what our take on it would be, I'm happy to talk to folks about that kind of thing. So, if you're facing some issues you'd like to talk about, don't be a stranger.
From my own personal experience in setting up this interview, there is a dedicated, efficient staff there that does a good job of getting people in touch with Dave, and Dave is very good about responding. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I got the best people in the world.
Great. Thanks, Dave.
Cool. Thank you.
This episode has been brought to you by Kamak Ranch Supply. Check out their website at kamakranchsupply.com. Here's the deal about Kamak Ranch Supply. When you call and ask them about a product, there's no blank pause on the other end of the line because they don't understand the product that you just asked them about. If they are selling it, they understand it because they are producers, and Gary Kamak himself, the owner of Kamak Ranch Supply, is a producer. So if you want answers about the products you're calling to ask about from producers, call Kamak Ranch Supply or check out their website at kamakranchsupply.com. Well, I'm sure there was plenty of mental cud to chew on there. Maybe a couple more listens and we can all wrap our mind around some of that stuff. Really appreciate Dave taking the opportunity to sit down with me and discuss some of those things that we can use to think through what we can best do to serve our customer and who our customer is. So I hope it was a helpful episode for you. Again, if you know some ranchers in those top 5 beef producing states of Texas, Nebraska, Kansas, California, and Oklahoma, and you want to throw a line out my way, hit me up at workingcows.net/contact or 605-549-5401, 605-549-5401. Coming up next week on the show, we've got Roland Cruz. Tune in for that. A really great conversation with Roland Cruz coming your way on Monday of next week. We'll see you then.
We invite you to visit workingcows.net to subscribe to the show via iTunes or Stitcher. You'll also find detailed show notes pages, resources from our guests, and the industry leaders who have influenced them. For more ideas on putting your cows to work for you in a more profitable way, tune in next week.